Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another recap review of the hit MGM Plus original series, Godfather of Harlem. We here are on episode 3 of season 4. It's your boy Lucas with my guy, Nate here. What is going on this evening, sir?
Doing good, my guy. How you feeling?
Hey, man, I am all for jumping into other black people considering other black people monkeys. That is like the title for me of this episode, with the introduction of one of the greatest black men ever to grace this earth in James Baldwin. So let's jump immediately to it as the episode starts off with Mr. James Baldwin giving a speech attended by Bumpy and Mayme and the rich socialite that we met last episode, who, as she called James Baldwin, pretty monkey or nice little monkey, as she referred him to, which is crazy. But here we get the outburst between Bumpy and James Baldwin, and we see the conflict between the two as they sit on different sides of the spectrum of what it means to be black at this time period. And then we get Nate calling Bumpy out to handle an emergency. Just what did you think about this introduction to the great James Baldwin and just how they played this whole scene out between him and Bumpy?
Yeah, I think it's been a while since we had a figure such as this on the show, since we had oh my god, was John Carlo's character in the early parts of the season.
Adam Powell.
Yeah. We're like, in a way, you say like everybody black is fighting for the same thing, but obviously people with different approaches, or people in terms of maybe even their own privilege in terms of not always seeing the same way. And in a way, this is verbal black on black crime, because and I'm not saying that there's no truth on it, but like that wasn't the place to do it considering the audience that was at hand. But Michael Benjamin Washington, got a chance to interview him. What a fantastic introduction. And this is why I like Godfather of Harlem, because what a pivotal part of history, American history, black history, and how it was just all happening in New York. It's like, who else was going to show up to New York? New York, in a way, is kind of funny because, and I believe I said this to him. I said to somebody in an interview, I said, you kind of think about the Avengers and how everybody somehow, some way, all lives in New York. Well, damn, it ain't if that ain't the truth about black people in this period. Everybody was in New York, and I think seeing this character, again, fantastically played by Michael and somebody that is challenging Bumpy, but Mayme's also kind of looking on too, like, oh, wait a minute, this wasn't in my cards. I didn't think this would be a thing. And then we know what she advocates for. We know that she stands by her husband, but she knows she's looking for the betterment of black people. So I think it kind of threw her off a little bit. So there was a lot of like judgy eyes floating around, a lot of people being sort of caught off guard of what was occurring. But it was a great beginning of the episode. And this is episode 3, and we got 2 major characters and figures of history introduced, and you just knew something was going to be special. But yeah, as I mentioned, we haven't really had a character like this since Adam Powell, played by Giancarlo Esposito. So now you're kind of wondering, like, where is this journey going to go with somebody who is not a politician, but somebody who's definitely a big figure, but a big advocate in figure, or I keep saying figure, but somebody who's in New York that definitely will play a part into things to come.
I mean, it's you just can't help but say they got somebody to play accurately to me in Michael's portrayal, James Baldwin. That's huge. I mean, this is a black man that in this time period was openly queer black man in the 60s.
Yeah.
Besides like Byron Rustin, those did not exist. And just the impact that James' work had. And then if you he's a person, just go back and look up stuff. It's an amazing interview with, I want to say, him and Nina Simone, and then another one with him and Angela Davis that are phenomenal. And then you get to, I think, again, one of the best things about Godfather of Harlem, you could go back and look at those real clips of his real interviews, then see Michael's portrayal of him and be like, oh, so this wasn't like a farce, an added on bonus. Like, he was really this way back then, and that just is a testament to just how great of a job Michael does at portraying James Baldwin, especially in this first scene.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say too is like, what's interesting is seeing that they were at Foes, and I haven't done any looking up any history on the two of them. But what I do know about James Baldwin and him being an activist at this time was a lot of people came to New York because of what happened to Malcolm X. And we'll talk about the Black Panthers later, but like this was sort of like the next stop on everybody's tour because everybody wants to know the truth about what happened and to either pick up the sort of the void that Malcolm X now leaves. This was somebody in James Baldwin who was heavily influenced by Malcolm X. Bumpy's right-hand man, guy, brother, where everyone put it, is Malcolm X. So to kind of see them at Foes initially, and we'll talk about what happens later, is kind of wanting to know like how once they realize that they do have a common interest, that they have a common friend or influence, you know, how does that play a part where we know that Bumpy is struggling to do things right by way of the ghost of Malcolm X going wherever he goes. So I'm super interested to see. I also want to say one other thing. I wonder if there's going to be a play on anything that James has ever written, if there's influence from Bumpy in it, and they're trying to like give us a hint, like he also could have been an influence to some of his stuff. So
that would be very interesting.
I'm kind of wanting to see where they're going to kind of go at in terms of throwing out some little tidbits out there.
I'm really interested in seeing that because that would be something that I think would get everyone's interest on seeing exactly what's going on here. But next up, we get, I always say this name wrong. I don't know how, because it's an old Black woman name. Is it Willamina? I can't remember what it is, but she's played by Whoopi Goldberg. I know that much. I just never get this in the 2.5 seasons we've covered this show. I've never gotten this name right, and I don't know how that's humanly possible. But keep on reminding myself, this is an old Black woman's name. At times, the country of it will not slip off your tongue properly, as I try to correct it into right English or correct English for our time period.
Can we talk about how Whoopi Goldberg is like a glorified cameo in the show, and it's just okay?
No, Whoopi EGOT Goldberg said, "You know what? I'll do y'all a favor and do a few scenes in a few episodes." Like, she was the highest paid actress in Hollywood at one point in time. But again, that's the greatness of this show. But here we get the discussion between her and Bumpy, and this is about the buildings and the property that Bumpy wants to buy. And she lets him know that someone named Marshall Grant has now bought all the buildings that Bumpy thought he had in escrow, and that he's actually superseded Bumpy. And this is just part of the regentrification of Harlem. The thing that Bumpy has been fighting against the most here is what goes up here between them two. What did you think about this conversation? The power structure being presented to Bumpy the way with Miss Willamina. Miss Willamina doesn't exceed here with Bumpy.
The first thing I thought was Floyd Mayweather. I said, this sounds familiar. Somebody who thought they had it in the bag, and only to find out that was there another investor with Floyd, or he just lied about that whole thing. But
all his properties that he rented.
I don't know. That's the first thing I thought about was Floyd Mayweather here. My first thought is like, what's the significance of this as a part of the story?
Yes,
but I think because it does continue to be about Bumpy wanting to go more legit, but also by everything that he's been slandered about, even just one scene ago, about all the detriment that he's done to Harlem, that we see that, like, there's obviously huge financial gain here, but it also is sort of a blocker for the gentrification that is frequently occurring. So that, and plus finances is back a question again. And the last time finances was a question for him, my guy had to get very desperate in some of his tactics. So I started to think like, oh boy, where is this going to take him? But this was a beautiful, very self-contained story with Bumpy The gentleman named who was that elder who was fraud. Get Jason Statham, because Jason Statham, in the Beekeeper, how he doesn't let elders get scammed and he goes out and kill people. Well, go get these white men that got this guy, because this was wrong. And it's crazy that I think we all can agree these things happen all the time. and it's so sad about how folks are how older folks are always taking advantage of.
Swindled.
And swindled to the T. So Bumpy being the hero, but also having a measure of self-redemption from who he has been known to be from this guy. Definitely a very interesting self-contained arc in this one episode. But yeah, first thing I thought was like, oh, more financial troubles, and what is he going to do in order to get whoever this person was? Because at this point, we do not think it's a black person. I don't think no one thought it was a black person.
Not unless you're crazy in the 60s and a black person going against Bumpy in this area. Absolutely not.
That's a good point. But it just was said, like, who the hell would have been bold enough to do this? Don't they know who Bumpy is? Well, of course, it had to be the white man. It had to be.
Exactly. They framed it perfectly. And the way it was supposed to be framed. But in the following scene, we get, again, the reintroduction of Frank Lucas here. As here we see he's concerned about moving some of the drugs that he stole because he understands everyone that is coming after him for doing this. But here Frank also comes up with a plan to find one Italian to help him move the drugs. What did you think about this scene with this young lady who still hasn't gotten a proper introduction exactly what she's going to eventually mean to Frank, but him just right here plotting to decide how the heck am I going to get out of this situation after lying about giving back drugs, but actually I cut the drugs so I can keep a portion for myself, but people are still going to be after me for doing this.
Is it wrong for me to say this will be 100% his detriment? I mean, if her name ain't Mink Coat, I don't know what it is.
That's about to say.
Hey, you know what's funny? For the folks that's here from our Raising Kanan recaps and reviews, it's always to the point of us saying, when is Juke going to turn into this savage? And we know Juke eventually dies when she's older, and Kanan eventually dies. So it's like we just know these things are happening. It is insane that now I'm starting to get this idea of just saying, when is Frank Lucas going to trip over his own feet? when is he going to start feeling himself too much that we start to see the mistakes play out? And I know we're way far from that, but I couldn't help but to think, oh, that's a mink coat if I ain't seen one before. And that's the reference to the mink coat at the Tyson fight, folks.
I mean, at this point, no one should need to know. Everyone knows what that
I hope so. They yeah.
The reference is either have the mink coat that Frank had on at the fight, or you got the photo shoot that Nikki Barnes did on the cover of a magazine.
Oh, that's right.
Both of those two led to the same downfall of things you have no business doing here. Yeah. But again, here this is just Frank again trying to figure out how to get his foot in the door by also kind of screwing over Bumpy. Like the deal was to give back the drugs completely. But let's go to the next scene because that plays a lot into exactly what I was about to say. And that is when Stella and Dale meet and they talk about the drugs. And this is Stella bringing up these drugs are shit because they are cut to hell. Which anybody knows that just means, put a little bit in baggie, put a little bit in the purse type of thing. And that's what Frank did here. But this is just an interesting conversation because this is when Dale agrees to tell Bumpy it's a problem with Frank again. And that he kind of double-crossed Bumpy in the end. I don't know if it's much to talk about there because that just leaves the window open that we know it happens.
Well, one thing I'm going to say is that we know the Gigante family now with Chin being gone is Stella. And now what's his name is backing her up. I said it to Lucy, and I'm going to continue to say it probably every review, is that I love this character. this is probably one of the most confident we have seen her in a position like this in a while. Not a flinch, not a measure of uncertainty. And I went back and watched season 1 again just to really see her arc, where she was chasing the plenty of guys, Teddy. Y'all said the rape, but like Teddy, really? She was right. And then everything she did, she was on short. Every moment, every decision she made was a liability. It's really cool to see her now like be at the table and like it knows what it is. I can't wait to see what goes on beyond that, how she runs that part of the family, but the part of the families with her family. But I gotta say, it was just something about that shot that I was like, this is really, really cool to kind of see where this character is at this point. But yeah, we knew at some point that Frank was going to come in and make a lot of mess for folks, and of course it's going to get back to Bumpy. So it's interesting because we all know where that story goes. We know at some point that he becomes sort of under his tutelage, which I will say this. This is the last thing I'm gonna say. Go look at the interview we did with McCunnan Smith, who plays Junie. He has a lot of like perspective about Frank's arrival and who truly is Bumpy's right-hand man, because we know Junie is sort of that person. Like we know Dale and Nat, they're the street hitters. They go do what they got to do. But when it comes down to Junie, it's a little bit more serious, a little bit more technical, you know. So how does Frank come in and just all of a sudden step over all three of them and become in position, as we know from American Gangster, or maybe your version of the history here? But he definitely gives some interesting perspective on that. But yeah, all eyes are set in terms of like, he's a problem. Will Bumpy kill him? How long will Bumpy stand him? Only for us to know at some point they turn the page and they get to working together in a way. He puts them under his wing. How did we get there? So yeah. It's almost like when you have your little brother, where you're just like, God, I hate this little boy. He's getting all the toys, the attention, or he's causing all the trouble. He can't do anything right. To ultimately that being your best friend, y'all do everything together, y'all ride or die together. And now he basically becomes little you because he's following your every steps that you do. So like that is the excitement of Frank Lucas and Bumpy's journey, as we're starting to really see starting to get ironed out now.
I mean, and then next, speaking of people's journey, here we go with if it's one thing Elise gonna do, she gonna be influenced by outside people. So we get Mayme and Elise as they're watching TV, and we get on television the depiction of the introduction of the Black Panther Party to the Godfather of Harlem. Now, it's not much here to talk about in this scene. Again, just pay attention. Elise was a Muslim because her influence. And the moment you see her on TV looking at those Black Panthers, you're like, oh.
No. Be clear, because I was going to give you one more moment to get it right. Yeah, there may be Black Panthers on screen, but all they see is black men. That's all they see right now. They looking real good right now. It's like, wait a minute.
Hey, it don't take much. It don't take. They just better not have at least fall for Fred Hampton or something.
We're
gonna have a problem at this point, Joe. She can't run through history this way.
Yeah. Or do you think there's a chance that if it's not Fred, do we get Huey here at any point?
It's a good possibility. Because eventually you're going to have to show the impact that the Black Panther Party is having at this time. And you're going to have to use a figurehead of them to do so. I jokingly said Fred, but Fred is, I want to say, in Chicago? I want to say he's not in New York. So, again, but you will have to pick a figurehead eventually just to show. And it's Godfather of Harlem. I think they love...
TV moment, just like that.
Yeah.
Or better yet... Yeah, or better yet, forget the acting it, show stock footage of it or whatnot. You know, they love to splice in historical moments, and why not show wherever respective city they were in at the time? Give a little clip of that.
Exactly. Next up, we get Bumpy and Nat as they go to visit Marshall Grant to find out who this person is that bought all of these buildings up from under
Floyd
Bumpy.
Mayweather.
And here we find out the interesting story that Marshall Grant is someone who used to deal with Bumpy's sister. And he has a bad history with Bumpy. So, because this is just an introduction of it, I do want to jump ahead a little bit and just talk about the way they depicted, before we get to their final scene together, but the way they depicted this episode of the tension between Bumpy and Marshall, because we've never seen Bumpy not be physical with people. And we see him, even when Grant shows him complete disrespect, Bumpy brushes it all off.
Mm-hmm.
As he regrets the decisions that he made. What did you think about the way they depicted them two together and their interactions, and the way, I don't want to say that Bumpy becomes more meek when he deals with Marshall, but he definitely is not the Bumpy we're accustomed to seeing.
I think we have to give credit to the very intentional writing of the basically life after Malcolm X, that Bumpy is looking to be a changed man. So we are seeing him in a way that we haven't seen him before. That's where I have to want to believe this. So that's that. But as me, as just the viewer that wasn't really trying to look in that deep capacity, I 100% was like, wait a minute, what? Like, this is somebody messing with his money and his real estate, and he's taking the high road here?
Exactly.
So
unlike Bumpy.
Yeah, not like Bumpy here. I was confused here. So yeah, I was just thoroughly surprised.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to put it here, is that you're just surprised about that interaction with everything that happens. Next up, we got Bumpy. Mayme and James. And they go over and they talk about Bumpy and Bumpy's plans. Here again, this is just, I think, setting up the eventual confrontation you're going to get later on in the episode between Bumpy and James. As here we see the conflict between them two, as James has a certain depiction of Bumpy that's not going to change here. But we've seen this depiction throughout this entire series with Bumpy. So it's just great to see that you introduce a character like James and he still has that same perspective of kind of leaving Bumpy where he's at, even though we understand that Bumpy's trying his best to get better. It's just a very interesting dynamic here between Mayme and James. There's not much else to talk about right there unless you can think of something. Great. Next up, we get Nate as he waits on the mailman just to find, this is just a nice scene that you normally set up in the type of show just to see who the heck is financing this man. Because this black man ain't no way in heck he's financing himself here.
Yeah,
and this is just Nate understanding his job and sitting back to watch and see who's financing Marshall Grant. We're not going to talk about the big reveal when it's revealed yet, but we do eventually find out who is backing him, and then that's when the proverbial shit hits the fan between them and Bumpy. But next up, we get Stella visits. I want to say this right. Stella visits Della. Yes.
Yeah.
And Della is Teddy's mother from season 1, which is very interesting because if you remember season 1, they sent her away for her safety after everything happened. But here, Stella has brought her back, and here she gets to talk with Stella about her father, as she's now kind of Stella's confidant. She's the person who Stella's leaning on here for advice on just how to do everything. What did you think about one, bringing this character back 3 years later, and then having this character still have that same impact on Stella that she had on season 1 with Stella?
Now, what better way to coach a vulture than to go straight to a black woman and try to get advice? No, I love it because and just to be clear, Stella has so much love for Teddy, so much love for Teddy, and it's good to see that even through his death, like there's still a measure of respect for his mother. And I know it's not such an easy sort of situation for her, but I think that shows a measure of confidence and looking to mend things through it. But like, yeah, if there's anybody that can give you really perspective, it would be her. She's unseen it all. She lost her son, and that's why she gives out stern advices the way she did. Now, forget that. Unless you have something else to say. What I was really, really interested about the scene is timing was like 5 seconds off, because I was like, well, what would that interaction have been? Stella leaving out and Afeni Shakur walking in. They missed each other by 1 second. And I don't know why they decided to have both be in the same place at the same time, but also have them not to meet each other. What would that mean? What would that could have been? Obviously, I raved about the introduction of Afeni to Devin, who plays her. Who Devin is a Broadway actress, so she doesn't have many to none television credits. And I think it's a very fierce introduction, and I love the fact that all the men were breaking her neck, because beyond her being a Black Panther, but she is a leader, and there's a certain measure of pride behind power and pride. So like that introduction and how they built that, it was so damn good. I just thought that, man, if they gave 1 extra second faster where she would have crossed Stella, what would that have looked like? You know? And again, it would have been cool, because I think Stella's a woman in power in her own way, but now you're seeing a different type of power and respect, and how that would have been. So that's where I was really at with that. But I would also say that
that dynamic play out.
I mean, I'm not saying I wanted the drama or anything, but like
no. But you just
maybe
two powerful women in a room together. You're wondering just how that dynamic going to play out.
Yeah,
I got you though. I got you. Let me try to remember the show right, because we literally covered the show, and it was #1 on Netflix for a while. What's the show with Bryan Cranston? Your Honor.
Oh, Your Honor.
Yes,
Netflix. Showtime.
So, well, no, I mean it got life again when it was on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Like, we covered it on Showtime, but it got life. But that's the dynamic.
Yeah, Big Mo and
that's the dynamic.
Yeah. That's what you're talking about, right? Big Mo. Yeah. Okay.
Two power, and again, it's not necessarily the conflict you want to see. It's just to have two powerful women at that point in time in the same area. You know, it's going to be a struggle between one or the other.
Yeah,
not a bad thing at all, but it's just something you want to see, especially from two actresses who you know can pull off something that can really work and be extremely special when it happens. But as you brought up with Afeni meeting with Elise at the diner, but then next we get the conversation, even though it's a scene beforehand where Bumpy finds out who's really backing Marshall Grant, but that's not nearly as important to talk about the conversation between Elise and Afeni about not letting the mission die with Malcolm. And this being the turning point of truly introducing exactly the point of the Black Panther Party. I know it's a short scene, but what did you think about the dynamic of them two having this discussion, in a way going back and forth with each other about exactly what the mission should be and how the mission should be presented? Because that's the biggest thing about the Black Panther Party.
Well, Elise, you give her any type of like pamphlet of interest, she gonna pay her dues and sign up right away. she may have like one bit of concern or question, but after that she's like, yeah, I'm signing up, I'm a member now. But yeah, it fits her DNA, considering all things that happens every day she's been through. I mean, I think maybe that's a little bit of what Elise is, and there's a lot of people that's like this in the world that says my relevance is to always be involved with something. I think about folks who, jump around from being in like organizations and schools to fraternity sororities to, going into like any type of like uniform service. It's just the measure of like, this is my way of, putting out to the world. I need to be involved in some measure of organization. So I see the same with her, and I know it's all really stemmed about her, basically her journey of being an activist. But I think it's also very much and always still will be a moment of self-discovery. I think she's truly still trying to figure herself out through all of this. But also keeping Malcolm alive too. I think her way of grieving Malcolm is much different from her father, but they both, I would say, have the same journey of saying just wanting to make him proud.
especially with everything going on with Elise and Omar.
Mm-hmm.
Like this gives her that other outlet that she's looking for.
Yeah.
To not only keep Malcolm's legacy alive, but keep the fight alive. Because she's
Yep.
also seen now the man that she loved being railroaded the way he is. And all of it coincides with her now being introduced to these black people who are a little more aggressive than the way Malcolm was.
Yeah.
But still go by the exact same message that Malcolm was preaching about not being subservient and not waiting for the world to give you anything and understanding it's your right to take it. So it's just a very interesting dynamic there that we get. Next up, Bumpy finds out who backing Margaret, and it is Fred Straub. And this is where Bumpy confronts him about his plans to, did he say revigorate Harlem? Because I swear,
Translation.
Get rid of all the Negroes. so for you folks in New York currently who live in Sobro or FOMO or all these other neighborhoods, they were black neighborhoods, and all of a sudden whites have given it different names.
Really but Soho, I got you. I hear you.
You know, FOMO exists. I'm not making that up. That's
it's okay.
That's literally now. I forget. I think it's Hell's Kitchen. It's what they call it now. Like again, this is just the beginning of what regentrification would look like, as Fred understands exactly how much worth is in that property, and he's willing to do whatever he has to do to get it from under Bumpy. It's just a very interesting conversation here at the beginning between him and Bumpy. As Bumpy lets him know, like, no, my goal is to bring back this neighborhood. And it brings an interesting conflict because do you side with the white man who you kind of know he wants to get rid of the Negroes? Or do you side with the drug dealer who, in the end, kind of brought down the neighborhood and now wants to actually build a community center in it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it is a very common theme in the black community of the long game, longevity, and what possibly could be right, which possibly can serve the community, or do you run towards the dollar, get yours and get out?
Exactly.
Not my problem type of mentality. So
exactly.
Yeah, I was like, oh boy, here's that again. But you know, it played out differently.
And next up, we have Stella. This is very interesting here because this is Stella and her new right-hand man as they confront one of their soldiers about the information on the drugs. Here we get to finally see boss Stella at play here. As she kind of lays down the rules, as we see the men still being hesitant of following her, but her still putting her foot down like, no, you're going to do exactly what I said do here. Yep. And this is my plan. This is what I want done and what I want executed. I think the most important element of this scene here to me is seeing Stella take command over everything.
Yeah.
Like her dad wanted her to.
Yep.
Next up, we get a very heated conversation and discussion between Margaret and her teacher about Christopher Columbus of all people to have this discussion about Christopher Columbus here in this school.
I ain't never in my life, and I ain't saying I ever had the courage to challenge a teacher like this, but I ain't never in my life see anybody grandstand Christopher Columbus like this teacher did. You might have thought he came with him over here the way he was standing up.
He came on the Mayflower with Christopher Columbus. And said, "You will not disrespect us off of this boat." But I think this is just at play the power dynamic and the racial power dynamic of the school, and they needed to show that. The point that Margaret, who eloquently was making points here, still wasn't able to speak because you're a little black girl, I'm a white man, you're going to listen to me.
Yeah.
And just the way that whole scene plays out. But next up is Dale and Nate as they catch up with Frank, as Frank tries to buy them off at one point in time, so them not to take him to Bumpy. Like that would work with them too here. Just in general, I want to just talk about the mindset of Frank here. It doesn't seem like it's fear as much as it's a survival instinct of him trying to see who else he can get to side with him if he has to go against Bumpy, and him attempting to bribe Bumpy's two main guys.
Yeah. I think either that or it is survival. Maybe you can even take Bumpy out of it, but maybe it's just survival to get $1, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Next up, we get to see exactly the axis of evil that we kind of knew existed as we get Fred as he goes to visit Joe Colombo about Bumpy and about his plans for Harlem here. I'll just ask this. Did you expect that them two would be connected here? Or was that something that threw you off a little bit? Because at first, Fred seems to be like just a straightforward businessman. Did you think it would be in play that he would be in connection with the families and in connection with Joe Colombo?
I mean, that is essentially the family's DNA. Drugs fund all of their real estate, their properties, and so on. So it does make sense that they would have a run-in. The fact that it happened the way it did, I was kind of like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. But I will say one other thing, too, is that Joe kind of standing up towards racism out of nowhere. It was kind of
out of all things, out of all people.
But yeah, I was definitely surprised. And Joe Colombo is and will always be an interesting character. Michael Raymond James. He just makes this character that's definitely not a good person. Definitely a joy to watch, but yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all, and even to get a quick laugh in that moment too. So interesting.
Very interesting scene between them two. And one of the key parts of that scene is at the end where they have the discussion on what happens once they close the deal. And one of the first things they said is Marshall has to die.
Yeah,
like this deal can't be closed and him still live.
Yeah,
because his name is on everything, so we have to get rid of him. It's a very interesting thing to bring that up. Next up is Mayme as she confronts Elise about the school teacher and about the call she got from the school about her challenging everything. And here we see Margaret kind of shrink into a shell as she doesn't tell her mother everything that happens. But then we get a gut-wrenching scene between her and Elise as we find out this teacher has been beating Margaret for what he deems as her being insubordinate student. Were you surprised that Margaret did not fully tell Mayme what was going to happen out of fear of what Bumpy would do?
I mean, so first things first, school systems beating children was very normal then. Didn't say it wasn't still racially charged, but yeah, people were definitely being disciplined in school. So I was definitely interested in how this was the cause and effect of this and how it was going to play out. Her confining her sister was interesting, but her all of a sudden being very aware of her dad and what her dad does and where her dad being locked up would do and how far he would go. Was interesting. The maturity of things, put it all out on the table. So a little measure of, a lot of measure of maturity with her really instantly in this episode. Because she's right. You tell your dad, you tell your big brother, in certain situations, there's not going to be any thinking. There's going to be straight reaction. So good on her for saving her father's, preventing her father from being locked up and saving this guy's life in this stuff. I was definitely surprised. Like, oh, okay, yeah. She took the absolute only route to go here, which still had monumental effects, but like still, her father. You know what the bigger question is? What's going to find out when he finds out? What's going to happen when he finds out that he wasn't aware?
Oh, that teacher's still going to die. It's Bumpy.
Yeah.
He's not having any parts of that at all.
Yeah, that's true.
And speaking of killing people, next up is where he finally confronts Frank about everything that Frank has been doing, and he lets Frank know, you cross me one more time and you're dead. Again, this is a threat you've been waiting for from Bumpy, especially in this episode where Bumpy comes across a little meek just because of his dealings with Marshall in this episode.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Frank, there's no meekness with Bumpy. He is very straightforward that I will kill you if I have to kill you if you cross me again. This is a very interesting dynamic, the way they play those two relationships off with Bumpy in this episode. Next up is Elise and Mayme go to the school to speak to the teacher and to speak to the principal. And here, just like you should expect in the 60s with white people, of course the teacher was right. Of course the teacher should have like, Negro, you had no business speaking in my class.
Yeah.
Type of thing. And him, even the principal threatening to call the police to arrest them if they pursue anything against his teacher. Just, I don't think it's much to talk about here because this is 60s racism. Which you expect.
Yeah,
white people are evil. Next up is Bumpy and Marshall meet and they talk about Fred. And this is about just the offer that Fred set up for Marshall to get him to piggyback in and buy these properties in his name because he understood that he could not do it and it had to be a black man that did it. But here also is we get to see the full scope of Marshall issues with Bumpy here. I just believe in this episode, these are some of the best scenes that you're going to see with Bumpy because this is a different version of Bumpy. This is the one that we don't see, but this is the regret, or let me phrase that. This is the Bumpy that we actually get to see in season 1 because it's some of the same regrets he has with his sister is the regrets he had with Elise. So we just have not seen this Bumpy in a while. So just what you think about this confrontation here with him and Marshall at this point in the episode where all the cards are laid on the table. Bumpy literally tells him, people are using you. But we see that because of the hatred that Marshall has towards Bumpy for what happened with Bumpy's sister, he just completely does not care.
I honestly think you well said that one there. just the more rational side of Bumpy and really tying in, like you said, all the events of season 1. And even you know, just really put in perspective about another man's argument for Bumpy's doing. And I think as much as which is again a beautiful self-contained arc, because we hear so much about how he was and what he's currently doing now, but like there is understanding, reasoning, rationality all involved by the end of this. So it was important to have this conversation to really like iron out all of the personality details and historical issues that they had.
Next up, we get, for some odd reason, the Italians send one man only, to go after Frank. Not saying that Frank is so dangerous you need to send multiple people, but through the course of Godfather of Harlem, we've literally never seen them send one man for one person to set up a one-on-one fight. We've literally never seen this happen. And they clearly do it here, which leads to Frank catching another body. It's not much here to talk about. It wasn't even an interesting fight. It was just, it made no sense in the grand scheme of things, but also we just got to pay attention to the Italian who went to go get Frank. He was just trying to make a name for himself more than anything. And we saw what that led to and what happened between him and Frank. Again, not much else to talk about here. This is kind of cutthroat, pun intended, what happens here between them in this scene. Next up, we get Joe as he sits down to have spaghetti with Marshall. Because if black folks don't love nothing else, black folks love them some spaghetti.
Yeah, agreed. Fully agreed. It's like giving somebody in the first 48 the cigarette. You already know they're getting ready to talk. You give them the spaghetti.
That's all he gave. If he had like grape drink next to him, that'd have been it. Marshall would have gave up the
guilty as charged here. That's all I'm gonna say.
But here, just a conversation about Marshall not reneging on the deal.
Yeah.
And not following through with anything with Bumpy. This is here for Joe just to let Marshall fully understand what you're into, who you're in business with, and Bumpy can't be part of this. And we will get rid of him to make sure he does not interrupt this deal here. I'm not going to focus on anything with Joe here because Joe's always been the exact same way. In this scene, did you start to see the change in Marshall? Because this just came across as different for him.
Yeah. 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 A lot of perspective being thrown his way. So, like, yeah, I think hearing all sides of the story to make a reasonable decision here. So
exactly. Next up, Margaret has had enough. Decided that enough is enough. Yana got kicked out of school. I'm getting beat. I'm telling my daddy exactly what's going on here. But here is Mayme stepping up and not wanting Bumpy to know. And at least coming up with a different plan to possibly stop this issue. I think this is what when you said what's going to happen when Bumpy finds out, they kind of play it out already here of trying to circumvent by handling it on their own. So even if Bumpy finds out, it's not going to be a big issue. Other than that, it's not much here to talk about that scene. It's just a setup of exactly the explosive finale of the episode. Here is possibly the best scene of the episode as we get to see a different confrontation between Bumpy and James Baldwin.
Yeah.
And this is James meeting up and apologizing to Bumpy.
Yeah, didn't see that.
About how he carried himself and everything that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And just talks about people putting up stones and how to tear them down and how to build plans to make Harlem better. What did you just think about in this setting, the way they showed this second confrontation between Bumpy and James, and that James kind of came in, what's the saying, hat in hand to Bumpy, to like, okay, I finally get what you're trying to do, and I don't want to hold you to the person you were when you're trying to do good for us.
Yeah, so you don't want to talk about the shoe shine secret? God, that's a tongue twister. You know how he brings that glow out. You don't want to talk about that?
You see how I purposely avoided bringing up any damn thing with two black men and a shoe shine.
Yeah, this was a surprising scene. I didn't think this would happen so quick, but yeah, I really don't even know what to make of it. But I just was definitely surprised that it just happened so quick. And guess I started to wonder, do everybody apologize when they're getting their shoes cleaned or shined in this case? But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what more of these conversations look like for the two of them going forward. Again, Malcolm has yet to been brought up, and we know that's going to be a conversation.
I think it's because back then, it's weird. We look down upon it now at our time period of other black men polishing shoes. But back then, I think that setting was almost equivalent to what we perceive as the barbershop now.
Yeah.
It's the time where everybody can be yourself. Like, you're not looking at this man like he's beneath you because he's shining your shoes. He's giving you a service and doing a damn good job of giving you a service. And then it leaves, especially when you just have like the 2-row Jones for shining shoes, where technically you two are right next to each other. Ain't no way in hell y'all not talking to one another. Like, again, it just sets up that conversational piece here. So while I did avoid bringing up the shining shoes, I think it's important in the history of the black community to understand the dynamics of that environment and how that can bridge the gap and bring two completely strangers or two people who are on different sides of the aisle together, or at least come to a mutual understanding of something. And that's what it is here with James, because we clearly see that James is regretful for the way he went at Bumpy. Because I think, and this is maybe my mind working, it comes across like James feels like he was doing the work of the white man by doing that to Bumpy. And if you know anything about James Baldwin, that is never his goal at all, to do anything of that nature. So I think that was just a conflict that they needed to show there, and they needed to show that there is a resolution to it, because this is just James backing Bumpy and saying, well, you're still trying to do good for us. No matter what you did in your past, I can't always hold you to it, which is a very firm lesson for Black people now, because that is one thing that we at times do selectively to one another. And I think that's what made this conversation between Bumpy and James so good. But next up, we get Elise and Mayme and the Panthers.
The Panthers. The nation of domination.
All right.
Elise said, I'll be damned.
Elise was Farouk. Oh, man. Right the moment you said nation of domination, the first thing that popped in my head was "We Are the Nation."
Yep, you know it. That's the song they play going down the hallway.
Oh my goodness. But so we're gonna just talk about this scene in totality here. What did you think about the beginning confrontation between them two and how everything escalated after that point?
No fear of the white man, no fear of the cops. They standing on business. They looking for justice, and that's just probably. I mean, well, just to be very clear, this is I would say the impact that they were looking to make, but very specifically was Afeni Shakir's involvement with the Panthers was truly about education and the community, and I think she was the one that founded like the food community program or something in New York. So like, understanding that like a lot of people think Black Panthers and they think a bunch of like radicalness and you know, and always trying to challenge the system from a political standpoint and whatnot. But like there was 100% a lot of community work being done, and to see that in that fashion. So like it's not in a way like they're trying to like glorify the Black Panthers in a way of making it seem so disingenuous, because they went out there, they still on business on all accounts, shall we just say. Huey Newton didn't have that picture for no reason. But for what it's worth, like seeing that like this was right down her wheelhouse here in terms of being involved in the school and the communities and the youth, the women youth. So it just makes sense. And I think it was a cool scene and another strong, important introduction, but I think it also leads folks to say, let me research this, like either how accurate it was or what really was her involvement. Like, why would the Black Panthers care about the schools? Like, they were doing things way much more bigger than that. You know, why would they be there? And it's just to show you that, like, it was the organization was impacted in all levels. So which is, you know, problematic when you have a disruption in the system.
Exactly. But again, that's the whole point of showing the Black Panthers. And well, the last scene with Elise, as she clearly has become a Black Panther, because why wouldn't she?
Yeah, she got her Avengers Assemble moment. She got her shield and her Iron Man helmet or her Thor hammer. Hey, she got all of that.
Not her throwing the leather coat at the teacher and that joint coming back in her hand like the hammer did for Cap.
Yep. I better stop playing.
Oh man. But next up we see Bumpy and Marshall as they confront Fred. Here is Bumpy lays out exactly the way they use Marshall to them. And then he introduces Marshall to them. And here we get Bumpy becoming his most honest with everything as it pertains to Marshall, with his plans, with everything that happened in their past. And this is Marshall finally getting it. Exactly what it means for Bumpy to not only own these properties, but what it means to his community. As Bumpy also shows him all Fred's plans, and none of those plans involve Black people. Involve everything but Black people. I think one of the plans to tear down the Apollo Theater.
Yes, that's where he drew the line, because if there's one thing my guy got to have, showtime at the Apollo, and he was not going to give that up. That's where he drew the line. You know, that's funny. It's so funny because you know, I won't get too political here, but you know, when certain folks heard that certain black things were going to be in jeopardy, people went the other way instantly. And this redrew line. He didn't care about anything about the history of these folks, the corruption, or where his dollar went. He just knew he heard the Apollo was being teared down. He says, no one's taking my Apollo in Jet magazines. I'm going with Bumpy. Bumpy in 5. That's what he said. He didn't care about nothing else.
Did you say Bumpy in 5? Yeah. Hold on. Let me get this right. We all alive. We here to survive. The Apollo will be here.
Apollo never dies.
We die. Bumpy in 5.
He was not having that shit. He said, hell no.
He said, I know y'all not talking about getting rid of Kiki Shepard. That lost y'all damn mind. But here is Marshall selling all the properties to Bumpy for $1. Again, this just sets up everything for Bumpy to then knock down all Fred's buildings to let him know, checkmate, I beat you at your own game. This is just the moment, especially what we got to pay attention to is Bumpy gave up everything. He financed everything he had for this deal. And someone was going to try to come in and undercut him to get it. And now he has finally secured everything that he needed to secure. The following scene is, matter of fact, I'm going to end on the following scene and then go back to what actually happens after the following scene. And that is just the last view of Bumpy and Marshall.
Yeah.
As Bumpy has bought Marshall a place. Let him know, this is all yours. And it didn't feel like he did this because Marshall sold him the property. He did this as a way for retribution for everything that's happened in the past between them two.
Yeah.
What did you just think about Marshall's reaction to Bumpy here? Because to me, that's the most important element of this scene. Because this is, again, we saw them go back and forth. We then see at the end when he sells the property to Bumpy, but he's still not doing that because of Bumpy. He's doing it because of what the white people were going to do to Harlem. But here in this scene where Bumpy hands him them keys and tell him, this is where you live at. This is your place. This is the first time we ever see him look at Bumpy like appreciative of everything.
Yeah. But like I think there's a couple of things. I mean, there's obviously a measure of empathy here, but I also think maybe Marshall, this is the first time he sees somebody actually being genuine with his intentions. I think that they, two grown men, they had a conversation about it, and this was something that word is bond. That's what happened here. They made right with each other, and this is the result of it. So and I guess I never sat back to assess if this is actually a good deal for either one of them, for both of them, definitely for Bumpy, but like maybe this is something he's just more at peace with. And he gets this Apollo, he gets to keep the Apollo in his Jet magazine. So it's all is good. He doesn't care about that. Anything else. That's it.
He could go every Saturday night. He can rub the little wood in front of the Apollo. You want to go on stage, you go on there. I mean, he may get booed off.
Yeah, might let him play the clown some days, VIP access. If you ever want to kick anybody out, might let him do it, But yeah, that's the one thing I didn't do. I didn't really assess, was it a good deal for him? But I think like morally, this definitely felt better on his cautious than working with the white
I think the part of it being a good deal is that he wasn't going to get anything from Fred. Nothing.
Yeah, true.
And Bumpy and Elise got him in a better neighborhood than he was accustomed to being in.
That's true.
And to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Bumpy wanted to do more than anything else, is that he just wanted him to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Because again, if Marshall's comfortable, I think it's some form of retribution to Bumpy for the way he treated his sister.
Yeah.
And that's the way Bumpy look at it. And that's why I think it's a good deal for both parties involved here. But we're going to close the episode out on, which is not the last scene, but what should have been the last scene, and that is the deal between Frank and Joe Colombo. As he goes to Joe Colombo to make a deal with the remaining drugs that he has to take Bumpy out, basically. What do you think about this, forming this partnership? Frank at this point has been extremely cutthroat on everything he's done here.
Yeah.
I don't know when we're going to get to the part where him and Bumpy are cool. Because this is not a deal that will lead to them ever being cool.
What did Joe say earlier? He says he can't. This has already been a request. So I think this word now, Joe is like, I'm tired of repeating myself. I can't. But could this be of any benefit to him? Or does this go to one of those sort of things where they let the small men take each other out? And maybe he sees this a way of being able to get him off the table, much like what's happening in Raising Kanan. So could this be one of those type of moves? But yeah, Joe he can't directly do it. He understands this in his relationship. So yeah.
But Joe gets 20 keys of pure out of it.
Yeah, this is 100% going to get Frank in the middle or something, get him caught up on both ends, I would say. So
don't tell me we missed the biggest picture of Frank, as before he went to the fight, it was Joe in the background like, "Hey Frank, where this coke? This
Oh my God! Now, oh my goodness, that's hilarious.
So exactly.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny?
What the heck?
You know what's funny? I'm surprised Stella doesn't take a look at Frank. Is it not her type? Or maybe because he doesn't play music, but
I about to say
beyond that.
Teddy's the only black man that Stella like. She ain't like nobody else.
That's true. She kind of on his on and off with Joe type of thing right now.
And then Teddy became Scar in Mufasa. So that's it. But what are your final thoughts about episode 3 of season 4 of Godfather of Harlem?
Really good, man. Really good. Cannot wait to see what trouble Frank gets into next episode. The craziness with him. But it's good. And things are ramping up, and I can't wait to see what's next. So good, solid third episode for the season.
And audience out there, what is your thoughts about this episode of Godfather of Harlem? What are your thoughts about the introduction of James Baldwin to bring someone so big in the grand scope of the world, especially in the black community, for him to be introduced into this show and the impact he immediately has on the show? What do you think about Bumpy's relationship here with Marshall? And beyond the business dealing, that we also get a peek into Bumpy's past, which we don't really get a lot into. But now we finally get to see a conflict that Bumpy had. What do you think about Elise and Afeni here and that budding relationship as she becomes a Black Panther, and how will that be moving forward for this show? And finally, what do you think about Frank and Joe and this supposed partnership, and how is this going to work out when Bumpy finds out? Now y'all can tune in immediately following. Once the episode airs, you come here, comment, like, subscribe. We'll be down in the chat to talk with you all about this episode, and any questions you have, again, we'll be down there to have a little conversation with y'all throughout the course of the week. So it ain't a one-time thing. We may just pop in there on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, or like during centers because the movie's boring. Multiple things we'll pop into to talk about this show. So then like, comment, subscribe. Again, let us know y'all opinion about this episode of Godfather of Harlem. This has been another recap review brought to you by Big Gold Belt. Peace, people.
I